Imagine waking up one morning only to realize that all your plans and dreams are suddenly at risk, perhaps even shattered by a single move made by your competitor. The fear, sorrow, and disappointment that would flood your mind are exactly what the United States experienced on the morning of October 4th, 1957. On that day, the Soviet Union successfully launched the world's first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, into orbit. This shocking news reverberated not just across the United States, but around the globe. The surprise success dramatically shifted the balance of power in the Cold War, tilting it in favor of the Soviet Union. The challenge posed by Sputnik threw the White House into a state of crisis. The notion that the Soviet Union had taken the lead in the space race was simply unacceptable to the United States. Failure to respond swiftly would allow this crisis to escalate, marking a significant victory for communism over capitalism in the annals of history. Sputnik's launch wasn't just about sending a satellite into space. It was a direct challenge to America's military, economic, and technological supremacy. The United States could not afford to let this stand. In response to the Soviet challenge, US President Dwight D. Eisenhower made a decisive move on July 29, 1958, almost exactly 1 year after Sputnik's launch, by establishing NASA. This new agency was tasked with directing America's space efforts and, most importantly, regaining the lead in the space race. NASA was given an almost unlimited budget to achieve its goals. The Soviet Union had sent a satellite into orbit. The only fitting response from the United States would be an even greater leap forward. In 1953, NASA launched Project Mercury, its first manned spaceflight program, with the ambitious goal of sending a human into orbit. However, in April 1961, American hopes were once again dashed when the Soviet Union achieved another historic first. They launched Yuri Gagarin into space aboard the Vostok 1 spacecraft, making him the first human to journey into space. This was seen as an undeniable victory for communism over capitalism. Yuri Gagarin, born in a modest Soviet town and hailing from a farming background, had become an icon. The Soviet Union proudly broadcasted the message that, under communism, even a farmer could reach the stars, putting the Soviets ahead in the space race with a score of 2-0. But the United States and NASA weren't idle. Just 1 month after Gagarin's historic flight, Alan Shepard became the first American to travel into space through the Mercury Redstone 3 program. Yet, as the saying goes, history remembers the firsts, not the seconds. The world was abuzz with talk of Gagarin's achievement and the Soviet Union's victory, leading many to believe that the space race was nearing its end. The United States urgently needed to act. The next critical step in the space race, understood by all, was a manned mission to the moon. If the United States could successfully land a human on the moon, it could not only shift the balance of power, but also erase its past failures and definitively end the space race. Of course, the Soviet Union had its sights set on the moon as well. They knew that a successful manned lunar landing would represent a decisive victory in the space race and the Cold War. During this time, they also aimed to send the first woman into orbit, a milestone they achieved in 1963 when Valentina Tereshkova orbited the Earth aboard Vostok 6, becoming the first woman in space. With the Soviets continuing to rack up achievements, America's only hope now rested on being the first to set foot on the moon. As all these events unfolded, a new president took office in the United States. The young, dynamic John F. Kennedy, who had his sights firmly set on space, succeeded Eisenhower. Under Kennedy's leadership, the manned lunar mission gained momentum. In 1961, the Apollo project was launched, and the United States developed the powerful Saturn rockets, far more potent than anything the Soviet Union had. These rockets possessed immense thrust power, capable of propelling the spacecraft nearly 170 kilometers above the Earth. As the years passed, the completion of the project drew closer. However, a significant question loomed. who would be the first person to set foot on the moon. The Soviet Union had already sent a farmer into space, making a powerful statement about communism, and the United States needed to respond with an equally potent message of capitalism. For this historic mission, NASA selected Neil Armstrong, who was both a university professor and a military officer, Buzz Aldrin, a soldier with advanced military training, and Michael Collins, a pilot in the Air Force. These three men were destined to become part of American history as the team that would land on the moon. Although it's somewhat ironic and a bit melancholic that Michael Collins, despite traveling all the way to the moon, never actually walked on its surface, remaining in the command module instead. By July 16, 1969, the time had come. NASA engineers had completed the spacecraft that would carry the three astronauts to the moon, powered by the colossal Saturn rockets. The entire world had its eyes fixed on America, eagerly awaiting to see if they would deliver the final blow in the space race. At precisely 13:32, the famous countdown began, and the deafening roar of the Saturn rocket's engines marked its liftoff, fueled by tremendous thrust. In mere seconds, the three astronauts had ascended kilometers above the Earth, successfully completing the first phase of their mission. They were now in the vast expanse of space, but this was only the beginning. 380,000 kilometers of space still lay between them and their goal. The sheer distance they had to travel underscores the miraculous and challenging nature of the moon mission. After a 4-day journey, the astronauts finally reached lunar orbit on July 20th. The entire world was watching, anticipating what could be the most significant event in human history. At around 1930, the lunar module separated from the spacecraft with 2 astronauts on board. Michael Collins remained in the command module, responsible for ensuring the safe return of his crewmates, a duty that, despite bringing him so close to the moon, kept him from ever setting foot on it. Finally, at 2017, the lunar module successfully landed on the moon. What happened next is known to all. Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and uttered the famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." This monumental achievement marked the United States and capitalism's absolute victory in the space race. The implications of this success indirectly contributed to the Cold War's outcome, culminating in the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. In a way, you could say that these 3 astronauts played a part in bringing down the entire Soviet Union. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, feel free to check out my channel and subscribe. Until the next video, whatever you do, make sure it's a story worth telling.